Hello and welcome. This is NT Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. The 9th National Assembly bicameral legislature is expected to be constituted in June at the expiration of the 8th Assembly. Already the race for the leadership of the National Assembly has begun in earnest with horse trading, intrigues and heightened campaigns. The play-out, analysts believe, is getting more interesting, perhaps in righting the wrongs, or as some see it, a time for true democracy. But what is likely to be the interest of the next leadership, especially in the fight against corruption, elimination of waste, upholding the rule of law, and quality legislation? Now, with the governing party, the All Progressives Congress, APC, having a majority in both chambers of the National Assembly, what should be the expectations of Nigerians? What's the take on calls for speedy passage of bills and smooth relationship between the legislature and the executive? Well, much of what will shape the 9th National Assembly would depend on the quality of leadership to come. And these are some of the issues we'll be taking a look at tonight on NTA Tuesday Live. But first, let's get to see this report by Lami Ali.
The legislature is the hallmark of democracy, vested with the responsibility of making laws, appropriating amounts for the running of government, and oversighting government agencies, among other constitutional mandates. The 8th Assembly of Nigeria's bicameral legislature will in a couple of weeks wind up to pave way for the inauguration of the 9th Assembly. A key question by stakeholders is, what should be the agenda of the 9th Assembly?
The 9th Assembly should first of all think of taking and approving economic and developmental measures that are in accord with the thinking of the executive, with the thinking of the ruling party, and in accord with what the people really want. What the people really want now is employment, improvement in the economy, fighting corruption, and there are so many bills and measures on these matters which are pending before the 8th Assembly.
In terms of training, in terms of our capacity to perform, even in terms of this global e-parliamentary operations, certainly we will expect the 9th Assembly to be more positioned than the last one. And I also see in the membership of members coming into the 9th Assembly, a cream of wonderful and intelligent Nigerians who have come from various angles of life, who have various dispositions from different professional backgrounds that I believe they are readily available to put in their best towards making the 9th Assembly a wonderful one as well.
There will be several issues of national interest and concern that the Parliament will have to address. Some of them are historical, and many of them will become contemporary and unfold as events, pass. But for me, personally, the most significant area of interest and concern for me is getting our budget process right. The whole idea of budget spillover, budget approval spillover into the year of operation is not good for us as a country. It doesn't speak well of us as a country to be deliberating on a budget for a financial year during the financial year for which the budget is meant. It's a huge national embarrassment.
A record 219 bills were passed by the 8th Assembly, some of which have been assented to by President Muhammadu Buhari. Observers see the constitution of principal officers as the first hurdle of the 9th Assembly, to be followed by the review of outstanding bills, one of which is the amendments of the Electoral Act.
Completely repealing the present Electoral Act and reenacting a new Electoral Act, which will take into account all the observations that have been made by the previous judgment and perhaps judgment that will be made by the different courts in the present election, by the tribunals, by the Court of Appeal, by the Supreme Court.
The emergence of the leadership was also a controversial one. In the end, you have a situation whereby the assembly, the National Assembly, is being led by an opposition head as against the normal practice. So this time around, with the steps the party is taking, and with the kind of commitment members have to really do what they're expected to do, I expect to see an assembly, especially the House of Representatives, that will work in tandem, hand in hand, with the executive arm of government in order to promote the policies and programs of the APC administration.
Lami Ali, NTA News.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's go ahead and introduce our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program Daniel Hassan Bwala. He's a legal practitioner, author, adjunct lecturer, and member Lincoln's Inn, London. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Let me also introduce Honorable Mohammed Kumalia, former minority leader in the House of Representatives during the 5th National Assembly. He's also a lawyer. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Cyril.
Okay. We'd like to welcome Honorable West Idahosa, also a lawyer, policy expert, and a former legislator as well. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
All right. And joining us from our Port Harcourt Network Center is Amuda Kanike Abiodun, a senior advocate of Nigeria and a professor of law. Prof, thanks for being with us tonight.
It's my pleasure meeting you, also being with you tonight, and I'm grateful that you give me this privilege.
Right. Okay. Well, as usual, we acquaint you with the procedure. At the appropriate time, you can get to be part of the discussion in the studio. The platform will be on your screen. You take advantage of them. And for those calling in tonight, we always say this. When your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set, reduce the volume. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or echo. And the best way to know that your call has been passed through to the studio is you'll see your name on screen. Once you see your name on screen, that means your call is through, direct to the studio. So go right ahead, make your comment, ask a question, keep it straight to the point so others can also get on the platform. And don't waste too much time on the greetings. Just go straight to your point. And whatever issues you raise, our guests here will be willing to comment or discuss them in greater detail. So once again, welcome to NTA Tuesday Live. Let's begin. The 8th Assembly is winding down, and expectations are high as people look towards the 9th Assembly. But first, let's start from the premise of looking at the quality of the legislations, the work that the 8th Assembly did. What's your assessment of that?
Well, thank you for having me. Especially if you try to judge what they have done and you rank it with the provisions of the Constitution regarding the expectation from the legislature. You look at Section 4. That is the threefold dimension of the work of the legislature in a democratic government: to make laws for peace, make laws for order, and make laws for good government. In other words, they are making laws for national security. In the last 3 to 4 years that we have had, because of the problem that led to the emergence of the leaders of the National Assembly, as a country, we actually, in my view, have not had the opportunity of enjoying the lawmaking processes of the legislature in this term, which is why some of us are particularly concerned about the 9th Assembly. And we're hoping that we'll have the quality of leaders that will look into the provisions of the Constitution and do what is required to bring the deliverables of democracy to the Nigerian people.
All right. Honorable Kumalia, we'll put the same question to you, assessing the 8th Assembly, the quality of legislation that emanated from the chambers.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much, Cyril. One of the fundamental legislations that the National Assembly passes, like a ritual, is the Appropriation Act, which is one of the most fundamental legislations. And the process of passing the Appropriation Act in the last 4 years, 3 years, that passing the 4th one now, has been a bit problematic because of perception issues, especially in terms of the roles and responsibilities of the two arms of government. Whereas on the one hand, the executive has always believed that they have been elected to deliver on the promises they have made, and therefore they have responsibility for making proposals for the budget to the National Assembly, which is true. But at the same time, the legislature has the responsibility of looking into the budget, scrutinizing it, and making sure that it is passed in a manner that is defensible. You know, so this relationship management is very key and important. And the issue of leadership comes into play. That is the key dramatis personae, the president and his team on the one side, and the leadership of the National Assembly as, you know, personified by the Speaker, the Senate President, and the principal officers on the other. That relationship management is key in trying to smoothen some of the rough edges. It is a contest of authority, of power, of influence. I'm Speaker. I want to have a road project in my constituency. The Ministry of Road or whatever has not proposed it. And, you know, I believe I've also made that promise to my people. It should be there. So, you see, there has to be some kind of background information. And that leads me to the issue of engagement between the executive and the legislature well ahead of even the budget process, even at the level of conceptualization of the budget, because the legislators themselves are also elected representatives of the people. They campaigned, they made promises. And therefore, you cannot expect them to come and just rubber stamp. Where did we get the term rubber stamp? You know, and why is every legislature everywhere in the world does not want to be called a rubber stamp assembly? It is because you are expected to do some work, the work of scrutiny. And therefore, that, to some extent, has been a bit problematic, and it is important for going forward into the 9th Assembly for this particular role to be smoothened. It's not going to be absolutely smooth. It's never going to be 100% okay. There's going to be a contest between the two parties all the time, but it should be done in a manner that can be managed, and at the end of the day, deliver what is expected to the people, because the objective of this relationship is to ensure that the goodies of this process is delivered to the people by making sure that infrastructure and what have you is delivered to Nigerians.
All right, thank you so much. And Honorable Westy Dahosa, from your perspective.
Well, the truth is, I credit the 8th Assembly for a couple of laws. Significantly, I know that they tried to deal with the problem of the electoral law, which is running through the heart of Nigeria's democracy. It got to the point where it was stuck on the table of the executive. They also tried to deal with a couple of amendments, significantly with the pre-election issues. You know that legislators get there and spend 4 years prior to that pursuing their mandate or trying to safeguard the mandate and end up doing nothing. So the streamlining of the pre-election issues by amendment to the Constitution was a major concentration effort for lawmakers to face their job. But beyond that, I think the 8th Assembly spent too much time on quantity of the laws rather than the quality of the law. They were busy reading out numbers. The question is it the number of laws that you roll out that matters, or the laws that you roll out that turn out to become the instrument of social re-engineering? I didn't see much of that. There was so much insecurity in the country. There was so much hunger in the country. There was so much despondency in the country. And yet, you didn't see the lawmakers running through the mills trying to get some stability. It's not just about thinking about the presidency and lampooning the presidency. We need to talk about the typical American gets angry with Congress when things are not going right, because that is the primary constituency for his complaints. I didn't see much of debates on these matters. I just saw them glossing over it. And I hope that in the 9th Assembly, the quality of those who are coming will determine the type of leadership that they have. Because if you say leadership over who? These are first amongst equals. We are talking about people equally elected, not a group of Boy Scouts, coming to be led by a scoutmaster. That's not the point. And this is key, so that you don't make too much fuss about the leadership of the National Assembly. For me, it is the membership that is most critical.
Okay. All right. Let's go over to Port Harcourt Center, and where we have Professor Abiodun. And we'll ask you the same question. Put in perspective your thoughts about the 8th Assembly. What do you expect of the 9th Assembly? And particularly the quality of legislation that we saw coming out of this Assembly.
Well, as for me, the real issue behind this matter, which we are discussing today, is that the 9th Assembly should have it at the back of their mind that they are not coming there probably to stir some problems. What I mean by this is that they are not coming there to gather publicity from any members of the public. The whole essence of their coming there is to make sure that appropriate legislations are made, and then it's for the benefit of the masses. Then there should also be a relationship between the executive and the legislature. What I mean by this is that before these bills are presented to the House, it is better that it is discussed at the level of the executive, so that between the executive, they will have rubbed minds on some of those key legislations that are presented or to be passed. I also believe that the legislatures should be able to also meet the executive in terms of those key areas they really want to end or pass, so that in case they are sending it to the president, it would easily be signed into law and not just sent to the president, and the president send it back and say there are some areas of laws which they have made which is not practicably possible. These are the 8th Assembly has narrated. The 8th Assembly has been bedeviled with. Then the 9th Assembly has to be very careful about it. But we are not talking about legislatures alone. We also need to talk about the executive. What I meant by this is that the executive must link, maybe the senior special assistant to the president in legislatures have to be more in tandem with this good relationship, so that there will be rapport. Nobody will ask the legislature to be a rubber stamp, but also nobody will ask the legislatures to always be analogous to the executive. What will happen at the end of the day is that the masses will suffer for legislations that are either passed, not signed to law, or legislations that are passed but having one or two problems that does not meet the realities of the time. These are problems that need to be nipped in. And that's why, for now, that the party, the APC, probably have more of their members in the assembly. They should be able to have leaders that will be able to coordinate the assembly properly. Then that would the presidency, the executive, to also be able to work. There should be good rapport and unity between the executive and the legislatures. That will make sure the democracy we are asking for works better.
Let me stay with you a little longer, Prof. While appreciating the fact that politicians go out there and campaign on the platforms of their parties and whatever programs their parties have, is it unexpected that in the legislature, where national interest matters, party affiliation pales and a more nationalistic look is upheld?
As far as that situation is concerned, issue of party affiliation does not come in as such. But if it's a political party who is also willing to develop the society, who is willing to develop the country, then the agenda must be in tandem with what the people expected. But the legislature should also make it a point of duty where the executive head, probably they are not going in tandem with what they expected, then they should be able to, in a subtle manner, not in a way as to make sure they make the executive to see them as if it's a fight for all. There's a way you can call somebody to order and he will appreciate you. There's a way you call somebody to order and he would see you as sick. So in other words, there should be a subtle way of talking to each other between the executive and the legislature. Somebody can say, this is the bill we have. Then you can say, this area needs to be clarified. See our reason why we are saying this should not be done. If you don't, there's going to be a problem. Just like some of the lawyers in court would tell you, that some senior lawyers will come and begins to abuse them. Why are you doing like this and all the rest? He does not appreciate it. Then you call the gentleman and say, sorry, you are not well dressed. This is what you have done. Please go and jail. You would now be happy that the way you actually talk to him is in a subtle manner which he can appreciate. But where all is, what kind of legislation is this? What kind of bill is this? This is nonsense and all the rest. They will never appreciate each other. So national interest is more important than party affiliation. But where a party is also thinking national interest, then every other person should also float with the party that has national interest. But sometimes there may be need to correct a political party when they are derailing from where they are. But there must be a way to correct. If you don't correct someone very well, and it seems as if you are antagonistic to such person, he may not be happy or appreciate what you are saying. And then the same thing with members of the public. They may not also see you doing your work well. They will think that you are antagonistic to the executive, or the executive being antagonistic to the legislature. So there must be a way to each other. Otherwise, the essence of the national interest will be defeated.
We'll return to you in a moment, but Honorable Idahosa, must it necessarily be a power tussle? Who can flex muscles or who blinks first? And how much of negativity did we see coming out of this past experience with regards to the constant, at one point in time, the constant squabbles between the legislature and the executive?
Well, first, we have borrowed a robe that seemed to be so big for us, the presidential type of democracy, which we have gone to take from a very old democratic nation, and then we are now trying to fit that on our very slim political structure without thinking about the baggage that goes with the system. This is where we have a problem. Now, if we were a more realistic country politically, you may have found us operating a more Africanized type of parliamentary system, which allows you to sit in parliament as a minister. Not only do you conserve funds, then you are able to report to the leader of the country directly. You are also in a position to make the laws as he wants it directly. So you play that double role in one seat. But what we have now is you have a presidential system where the president has his entire structure completely different from the legislative structure. There's so much separation of powers in what we see. Now, the other point is you have political parties that upon which platform people get elected. The caucuses in the National Assembly of the parties, very weak. There is no strong document belonging to the caucus itself with which it hopes to help the political party that upon which platform it came to power. So you just have a group of people saying, I am PDP, I am APC. They are sitting there. They don't understand the manifesto of the party. As a group of people, they don't meet, they don't caucus under their roles. They don't talk about the committee structure. They don't talk about the sectors of the government. They don't even know how to complement the executive. So the problem then becomes the struggle limited to separation of power, separation of power. What does that mean? There is no place in the world where separation is completely separate. There is always that connectivity, and the lack of communication is the biggest problem we are having here. You have executive liaison officers who do not know how to communicate. It doesn't mean they should write apology letters or love letters to each other. Then you have also legislative leaders who also do not know how to communicate. I will always remember our first tenure. Kumalia was there. We ran against a very obstinate president. I think that they managed the crisis very well. They were very prolific thinkers. He was minority leader at the time. And we had issues always resolved because they thought so well through the process. So I think that rather than think that it's an unusual situation, it's not a problem. Bill Clinton, when he came here, described it as a creative tension, which takes place for the good of democracy. So it's not a setback. What we should be thinking about is getting the right people, into the offices.
And that brings us to the next issue of how much of a distraction is this process of getting people, the right people to run? How much of a distraction is that? Have you noticed that, particularly towards the end, the end part of this administration, this term, this tenure, relations became so frosty that quite a number of processes suffered as a result of the back and forth bickerings between both, the executive and the legislature.
Yeah, I mean, again, that brings us back to the issue of the fundamentals. That is, understanding the role of the institutions themselves. We're, like Honorable West the House has said, we're operating a presidential system of government where the concept of separation of powers is one of the key features. But you see, on the one hand, there is separation of powers, or if you like, the independence of the arms of government. But they are not totally independent. They're independent, but they are also interdependent. Because you cannot operate in a silo. Now, as a parliament, your function is that of lawmaking. And a corollary to that is the function of oversight of what the executive does. Because the parliament doesn't spend money. You appropriate. It is a function of the executive arm of government to spend the money. But you have the duty of ensuring that the money that you have appropriated is spent in the manner, spelled out by the appropriation legislation. So, you see, that gives the power of oversight. Now, coming back to the focus of your question, it is important for the legislature to realize that the executive arm of government are partners in progress. Because if you want to, remove yourself from the executive arm of government, or rather the executive wants to remove itself, seeing itself as the government, that the legislature is not part of the government, then you have a problem. Because the government is constituted of the three arms of government, each one of them with their respective responsibilities. Now, if you understand the role of the institutions on the one hand, the executive knows that it is their responsibility to spend the money of the country on our behalf as appropriated by the National Assembly. If you know that that is your role, and you appreciate that there is an organ or an agency or an institution that has the responsibility of checking how we spend this money. Once in the executive arm of government, you understand that. You will not see the legislature as meddlesome interlopers, as mere busybodies. Because most often you see some ministers in the executive arm of government question, especially like you said when we came in 1999. We were all young men, and we had a president that was like a father to all of us. And we were seeing like, who are these small boys? Why are they asking us questions? Because, for instance, there's somebody that has been a military president, in the military head of state, chairman of the Armed Forces Ruling Council. All the generals say sir to him. And here are some young men, they call themselves West Idahosa, Kumalia, Galinaba, and so on. Who are these people, by the way? And they're asking us questions on how we run this country. But again, fortunately, some of us knew our onions in terms of at least the textbook approach to, how the concept of separation of powers and some fundamental understanding of the Constitution itself. So to that extent, we were able to stand up to the call of duty, to our responsibilities, and say, well, as much as yes, you are a father to us, but we have a duty, we have work to do. And therefore, we must ask you questions. If Tony Anini comes, Tony Anini, like, he was a father to like all of us in terms of age and so on, and these small boys asking him questions, they feel this is very disrespectful. But, so first of all, the executive needs to understand what is their role and responsibility. The legislature need to understand their role and responsibility. The legislature cannot spend money. They can appropriate, but they cannot spend money. So, to that extent, once that is understood, then you need leaders with wisdom. You need leaders with wisdom that can understand these roles and need to know that the process is one of constant engagement, dialogue, and consensus building. So, if you think there's only one way of doing it, you are wrong. You just have to continuously engage with the other party. You need to be talking to each other. That's why, again, like he said, I think West was looking half of his size in 1999. All of us are looking bigger than we were looking then, because at that time we never slept. Because we realized that it was important for us to be engaging with almost every agency of the government, almost every leader of the executive arm of government, so that our concerns are understood and we try to form some kind of consensus for the betterment of the people of Nigeria.
How much of consensus building should go into the incoming assembly? And I'm saying this with a look at the party structure. Well, we have 91 political parties, but in real terms, you see that it's basically two parties, two dominant parties that are in the legislature. And so when you talk of consensus building, how much of this should be across party lines?
Well, I actually, with respect to political parties, I don't see colors. What I mean by that is there is rarely a difference between APC and PDP, quite frankly, from the Nigerian standpoint. If you are in America and you say you are a member of the Republican Party, it is very easy to distinguish between you and a Democrat, for example, when it comes to issues of ideology, policy matters, and approach to governance. For example, if you raise the issue of tax, you will know where the Democrats stand. If you raise the issue of economy, you know that the Democrats favor the idea of middle-class building, while the Republicans look at, building of entrepreneurship by removing tax for the rich, giving them tax incentive, thereby ensuring that they create jobs and employment. So whenever they differ on matters, you can always tell. And right from universities and lower institutions, people are developed with this ideology of a political party. So you see somebody under the age of 19 saying, I am a Democrat, I'm from the family of the Republicans. This is not the case in Nigeria. Political parties are often seen as platforms through which individuals actualize their aspirations to seize power in the hope that they bring democracy to the people. But in actual fact, you can count that majority of politicians who are in government do not, quite frankly, have an idea of governance in the first place. So where do you start to build the consensus? We can only manage what we have. Now, within the context of what we have, There is a dichotomy between what for example, if you look at the 8th Senate, most of the principal officers of the National Assembly that created problem for the executive were actual members of the APC who felt aggrieved by the way they were being treated after they, seized power in the National Assembly. And so they, I won't use the word connive, but they collaborated with the members of the other party to ensure that they frustrate every bit of what the president was doing. Because I will tell you, if you look at the Constitution, part of the responsibilities of legislators is also to expose corruption. They make laws, they supervise, and they expose corruption. But if you look at the past 4 years, they were busy fighting against the fight against corruption. And that is why someone like me, I am very, very critical and looking at even the leaders that are about to emerge for the 9th Assembly to say that individuals who have corruption charges and corruption allegations should not even be considered for the purpose of bringing them to the place of power. Because at the end of the day, the core value of APC, the three-pronged vision of the party, to fight insecurity, to promote the economy, and then to fight corruption in the country. So, executive, if, for example, you are members of the executive and the National Assembly, they all believe in the core mandate of the party, then it doesn't matter. I, for one, never and will never support the idea of the executive and legislature having a romance. In fact, the day that happens, the citizens are mortgaged. Yeah. Citizens are mortgaged. So, because if we are operating as checks and balance, it is expected that there are times, in fact, for the most part, we will disagree. But when we disagree, let it be on the premise of principle. Let it be probably on procedure. This is not what we find. So it's difficult for me to start talking about building consensus in the first place because the legislators and the executive must first understand whether or not they have the vision.
Right, you think too much attention is paid to the question of who emerges leader, who is a principal officer, who is not. Why is it so attractive? Why is leadership position in the National Assembly so attractive? I mean, the 9th Assembly is yet to be inaugurated, and already you can see newspaper adverts, people, putting themselves forward, as they say, putting their best foot forward to become principal officers. And this hasn't been gone into party, and has led to, already we have seen the signs of squabbles within the parties, not even any particular party, about how to go about this.
Yeah, the thing is that I believe that when people begin to put themselves forward for position as principal officers, it is with the hope that they will actualize their vision of bringing democracy or providing leadership for the either the Senate or National Assembly. For my party, I have a belief, and this is part of what I have had a lengthy discussion with the national chairman. I've had the privilege of providing legal services to him as well, that we should look forward to building a political party on the basis of ideology as a progressive party so that we don't wait for the next election before we begin to push for. In fact, he was talking about some incredible ideas that I quite appreciate about having periodic time where members of either the executive at state level or the National Assembly being taught on how to actualize the mandate of the party, the ideology of the party in the way they govern the society. Now, why people are struggling for position from the Nigerian standpoint, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it creates the opportunity for people to enrich themselves, sadly. So which is the reason why sometimes they can go out of their way. Otherwise, if I offer myself for service and you don't consider it necessary to elect me, why should I go all over the place trying to create chaotic situations simply because I want to actualize? For my party, I am very particular about the people that emerge. And that's why I'm quite critical of some of the decisions of the party. I respect the decision, but the right to express my view that these steps we are taking is wrong. For example, the party have zeroed in on somebody as Senate President, right? I share a different opinion. I x-rayed him over the period he has been in the National Assembly and the Senate and as Senate leader. Even at the time when the Senate was constituting itself as a problem to the executive, actualizing the mandate of the executive, he was quiet. He was docile. That's my opinion. And as we are going into the 9th Senate, individuals like that, when you put them forth as Senate President, we're not going to have we're not going to make progress.
Okay. Let's go back to Port Harcourt Center and again put this question to Professor Abiodun. What's your opinion? What do you think about, I mean, the Ninth Assembly is yet to even come in, and already there's a tussle for leadership. And there are Nigerians who say this kind of struggle for leadership positions may well distract the Assembly when it is inaugurated. And they say there's an example to go by. The minute you had this crisis when the 8th Assembly was being inaugurated over leadership, it took a while before the Assembly could settle down to do any meaningful job. It was all about who was going to be a principal officer, who wasn't going to be a principal officer. So if you say the most important thing to you is the membership, why should there be this struggle for it? What's the attraction?
Well, it's quite unfortunate that it has started, but Nigerian being who we are, everybody will say, give me the opportunity to serve you. And definitely people will say, let everybody be available to serve. And I think everybody in Nigeria will always try to be ambitious and say, I can be able to do it. One thing I want to say, with all due respect, everybody may have a different opinion, is that the ruling party, now the APC has majority. I believe that they can zero in on consensus candidates that would emerge. All they need to do is that you to speak to people. You don't begin to look at them as people who cannot be able to cause any problem. You cannot look at them as people who would not be able to give problems to the democracy we have. And I believe that even though everybody will have ambition, only one or two persons will be the one who will emerge, not everybody who will emerge as leaders. So in other words, even if the party had made up their mind who should be the executive, the leaders in the House, those who are aspiring and you felt that they ought not to contest, it is also better you're able to engage them and make them to see reason why those people were chosen. And if at the end of the day they feel that they must contest, then you allow them. But I still believe that you can continue to engage people. And then at the end of the day, they might decide that they are not contesting again. It's normal. I see Nigerians as people who will always say they want to be there. Take, for instance, you see what happens with respect to the political parties. People have to go to court and say, no, our party must be there. And then you have so many political parties registered until the law had to come and say that if you do not have any member, the party goes off. So everybody will always be fighting for right and say, it is my fundamental right to contest, my fundamental right to rule you. But at the end of the day, some persons will definitely make up their mind and decide not to contest again. And this can happen. The party will continue to engage and not probably say that, why are you going against the party rules? That's my belief, and I believe that a lot of people will see reason why definitely they ought not to have contested. But I know that it is normal thing that, in fact, I was envisaging it, that as soon as the election is over, as soon as we are going towards, in fact, it may emerge if care is not taken. But you can still engage a lot of people. All that we want is that those who will emerge as the leaders of the House, whether of the Senate or the House of Representatives, must have Nigerians at heart. They must have democracy in their mind. Because if you destroy the democracy, then where are we? And they are the ones that will suffer it first, and then we will suffer it on the other hand too. So in other words, definitely people would want to aspire to positions. But I believe that they can be talked to, and some of them may jettison the idea for others.
Well, Honorable Westi Dahosa, this is maybe going to be a two-pronged question based on the first premise is that there's a perception, the public, that leadership positions in the legislature, principal officers, that it has become a kind of reward system, and not much attention is paid to other factors, but mostly as a reward system. And then there's a perception that they're juicy appointments, and some not so juicy, and then the rest. So the public also has an opinion. They say, is this winner takes all the kind of thing which we should practice? That's on one hand. The second part of the question is, should so much energy be dissipated on who emerges? And on the other hand, what is the role of the political parties themselves in determining who occupies what position?
Okay, first of all, you talked about whether position is juicy and why they occupy, why people paid so much attention to trying to occupy these offices. I think there are some perks of power that go with these offices. Because if it is in terms of dexterity, commitment to work, and competence, it hasn't been at the forefront in the selection process. We've been lucky with one or two wonderful presiding officers, and the others have been nothing spectacular. But the point is, when you have a presiding officer with a fleet of motor cars, with an area of security men, living larger than life, and anyone who gets into the Senate, why will he not attract it? And so you start by cutting off these specs and making them look like ordinary men that they really are. We've seen many presiding officers outside of our country. If you go by the way they carry themselves, there won't be a reason to fight for that. So that's the point on that. And then the second point you wanted me to make is whether or not the political parties really need to bicker about this. Yes, they need to, but not in the way they are going about it. They need to because no one can be elected into the National Assembly except on the platform of a political party. And the political party cannot actualize its agenda except through the elected members in the National Assembly. So there is a need to understand that. Now, the party wants a candidate who will execute, in quote, or promote the execution or create the platform for success. The assembly itself is a body where you can only have a say in the leadership decision-making process if you are a member. So, but it's not only one party that is in the House or in the Senate. In many other democracies, every member with some level of party discipline will queue behind his party caucus nominations. I expect the APC to nominate persons for speakership and Senate presidency. I also expect the PDP to do so. It doesn't matter whether they may not have the votes to do so, but the contest begins there. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House in the U.S., got 220 votes. Her challenger got 192 votes. So you don't say because you are PDP, you are not the majority. Look for one of your own, put him forward. If he doesn't get it, he falls back to one of two things. Either you're an official leader of your opposition or the minority leader, period. There's no reason to think that a political party will not have an interest in. My only worry about when a political party goes to media platform and begin to speak about this is the way we want it. If you don't come with us, you go away. If you don't do this, this happens. You don't encourage the growth that we want for our democracy. And you don't also encourage the members of the National Assembly to form their own caucuses, develop their leadership, and get how a selection process through.
Okay, Honorable Kumadia, in addition to that, I'd still like you to say, are there juicy appointments? Because, I mean, this is the public perception. You are a minority leader. What were the perks?
Well, I think Honorable West has said it. Every office, every appointment comes with whether it's remuneration, emoluments, perks, whatever you want to call it. You know, even including the razzmatazz that comes with the office. You know, all this convoy of vehicles and so on and so forth. You know, and the retinue of, you know, SS and police coming with you. All these, the razzmatazz of the office. Yeah, they're all there. But of course, it is not. It is also true of members of the other arms of government. It is also true of the ministers. You know, we have minister friends before they became minister.
Should it be that way?
Well, you see, there has to be a balancing. Right. You know, once a public officer, and it's a function of the country we live in, you know, the level of enlightenment of the people, even the level of security we have in the country. If you are a public officer, you are more or less caught in the eye of the storm to some extent. And therefore, how much, there has to be a balance, how much protection do you need? You know, in the developed democracies, when you see either the Speaker of Parliament or a ranking member of Parliament or even a minister, you see him walking, you might just think he's all by himself. He may not be. There may be some people with him who are looking after what's happening to him, but it's not in the face of people like we do here. Here in Nigeria, you see, you know, a VIP standing right behind him, you know, and around him, you see about 10 people just milling around him, even not allowing him to do what he's supposed to do because they're just very close to him. But in other climes, they do it in more civilized ways. Even the president of countries, you know, in some jurisdictions, you see them looking very ordinary. I remember one occasion when Bill Clinton came to Nigeria, we had a lunch for him, and at the Sheraton, you know, I and his convoy arrived almost at the same time. Believe you me, the president and myself almost walked hand in hand into, because around him there wasn't that much, but yeah, you could see, you know, just not far from him, all these people wearing what you are wearing, you know, in your ears, all these Secret Service gentlemen. That is to show you that if it was in Nigeria, my car would not be allowed to park near where his car was parked. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, but that was something that happened to me, I think 2002 or 2001. So, yes, there are perks of offices. It is over-exaggerated in Nigeria. Right. It is excessive. And I absolutely agree with Honorable Edausa that it should be toned down. You know, beyond that, you're talking about the responsibility of the party, especially in the selection process of leaders. I think this is a very fundamental issue. Yes, the party has a role. But again, it has to be done in such a way that there is harmony and understanding between the key players. Don't forget, here we're talking about election of principal, or rather presiding officers. Presiding officers are those that preside over the sittings of the legislature, the Senate President, the Speaker, and their deputies. And then we have principal officer positions, like I was a principal officer, minority leader, majority leader, and so on. These are virtually party positions, you know, where the party can go and have a meeting with their caucus members and agree on who, you know, should emerge as the minority leader or the majority leader, of course, with the say of the parliamentarians themselves, and they just send the name to the floor of the Senate or the House and announce the person as the minority leader or the majority leader. But in the case of the presiding officers, they are officers of the House, of the entire House. They are not officers of PDP, and they are not officers of APC, for instance. They are officers of the House from a particular political party. And the process of their election is such that all members of the parliament from whichever party have a right to cast their vote for the person to emerge as their leader. Now, what the parties ought to do is to ensure, for instance, the majority party, the APC, which I belong to, the responsibility of the party is to ensure that, and of course, respecting the principle, you know, of federal character in the Constitution of Nigeria, to ensure that these offices are zoned and are spread in such a way that no particular section of the country or zone dominates these offices to the exclusion of the other zones of the country. Section 14.3 of the Constitution. You know, the government of the Federation of Nigeria shall be constituted in such a way that no particular section, ethnic, you know, or other considerations, you know, people from those areas dominating the government of the Federation. And in the manner in which they carry out their duty should also be reflective of the federal character. So the party ensures that, yes, these positions are distributed, you know, almost evenly somehow, and ensure the emergence. In fact, the process of emergence is even already, you know, slightly defined because, for instance, in both the Senate and the House, you're talking of ranking members.
Yeah.
You know, you don't allow a greenhorn that was just elected to Parliament, he wants to be Speaker, to the Senate President. It doesn't happen. What do you know? You know, you don't know the ropes. So, as we speak right now, the people that are contending to be Speaker and Senate President are people that have been there for 3-4 times. So, that elimination process has even reduced the number. Now, it is the responsibility of the party now to make sure that there is some level of consensus amongst its members. Where you have, for instance, more than one person indicating interest. If you can, through persuasion, through dialogue, through engagement, narrow it down to one person and the other person accepting, then that is fine. You can present him, and like he rightly said, the nominee of the other party, if the other party wants to be adventurous, you know, can contest against the dominant party and, you know, will gallantly lose to the dominant party. But in a situation, the snag is in a situation where, you know, you try to talk down because you have chosen a particular candidate. All other members of that party that want to occupy that position are seen as outsiders. You know, it creates some apprehension, and that leads to some kind of tension. And believe you me, that resurrects that feeling of independence I spoke about earlier, wherein the members of the parliament will say, okay, now since this person is being nominated, and they don't want anybody to contest against him, and they don't want to engage with anybody, dialogue with anybody, discuss with anybody, you know, they want to impose him, that means that person is going to be a stooge. And like Barrister Bola said, the day there is total harmony between the executive and the legislature, Nigerians have been sold. You know what I'm saying? So that is why it is important for the leader of parliament to emerge through a process that has the stamp and the authority of the legislators themselves, in addition to the party guiding the process. The party is the father of all. When a father says, this is my son, but I don't like this as my son, but I don't like this one, is this one I like, then you're caught in problem. And that's why I have said severally that it is important for the party to lay out its, you know, guidelines and evenly deal with its members. In any case, even if it's 100 people that want the position, only one person can get it. However, the process of that one person emerging, managing that process, is key to the success of the workings of the legislature after the process of the emergence, because this is just a one-off process.
So what you're saying is that what happens and with all this build-up may indeed affect the kind of work that we see from the legislature?
Obviously, if the process is not managed well, you see, what I've observed is that in 2015, like we all know, there has been this, you know, process that brought about, you know, even a member of a minority party becoming a presiding officer, which the APC as a party found very abhorrent, you know, and rightly so. I don't agree with it as well. However, APC is overreacting to that. In trying to ensure that that does not happen, APC as a party is overreacting. You know, I believe they should be hands-on, and they're hands-on. But they should do it in such a way You see, the Senate, as it were, in Hausa, they call them Majelis and Datijay, which means the House of Elders. So these are people that are themselves elders. So if you are talking about leadership of the party, the senators are part of the leadership of the party. And therefore, the process of engaging with these gentlemen should be a process that has the best techniques of diplomacy, of finesse, and of respect. You don't talk to them, you don't, deal with them in a manner that seeks to show that these are some, Boy Scouts, you said earlier, and like a garrison commander. I think that is a lot of people find a bit abhorrent.
Okay, we'll take a short break here. When we return, we'll look at other aspects for the incoming 9th Assembly and what Nigerians expect them to do. That's in a few minutes after this break. Stay with us on NT Tuesday Live. We'll be back. Some challenges with taking that break, so we'll just begin to...
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, so plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. Well, let's turn to Nanil Bwala and put this to him. If you haven't challenges in selecting or electing presiding officers, I still return to the earlier comments when you come to the question of principal officers,
right.
chairmanship of committees. There's a feeling that all these they are also juicy appointments in there. And again, we have heard of cases where parties are already beginning to quarrel over who would be a principal officer, who would be appointed into certain positions.
Right.
How do you think this will impact on the quality of the work of the legislature?
No doubt, when you have the right people in place, then you have the right program, and then it will impact positively. I, however, hold the opinion that the procedure for the emergence of these principal officers should be seen to be transparent. Now, our party's constitution is clear about the procedure for emergence of leaders: consensus, direct or indirect primaries. That has been. Consensus is one area where a political party can arrive at a decision without having to create rancors. And part of what they do in building the consensus is to say, if this and this can concede to this, then this and this are the likely positives that they will encounter or they will have going forward. And I thought, quite frankly, that the difference from APC and PDP, from the way I have engaged officers of the party, is to come up with a party with a difference, party that will deepen democracy. When you talk about deepening democracy, you're talking about the process for the emergence of people. So this is what I thought my party will do. It is obvious, now that it has been zoned, the Senate president to the Northeast, it is a contest between Senator Alin Dume, Senator Ahmed Lawal, Senator Governor Danjuma Goje, amongst others. They are the leading candidates. Now, if the party engage them, like the Honorable has said, there is the possibility that somebody can concede and you arrive at one, and the other person will not feel disrespected. Don't forget, for example, that Senator Alin Dume had been the leader before Senator Ahmed Lawal. So if you're talking about ranking position, he was first in line. And me, what I'm looking at as a party member and as a policy analyst, I look at the administration of President Buhari and how he can actualize that when you get a cooperative National Assembly. That means you have people who share your vision. They must be loyal. Between these principal officers, who so far has proven that is a loyal person? Even when you come down to the issue of Deputy Senate President, for example, there are individuals that I can project them and say these guys are not only competent, but they are loyal. But the procedure should be, you can do a shadow election, if it is 3 of them. Have them sign a memorandum, sort of. If you go through this shadow election, you can even engage them in a debate. Say, we're going to have a debate between these 3 individuals. Tell us what your vision is for the National Assembly and for our party. And then when you go through this process and somebody emerges, I don't think morality will permit the party who has lost to go and then conspire with the other party to bring. And I must tell you that PDP, every day, they are scheming. My fear for my party is that if the party arrives at a decision without building consensus, what is likely going to happen? Because what some of the people are saying is they are going to operate on the old standing rules of open ballot system in the electing leaders, and it is no longer going to be the secret ballot system that was introduced by the amended rule by Saraki. So that if you are a member of our party and you want to rebel, we will see and know you are the one that is going to vote for someone else. But to avoid that, let's have a democratic means of getting people to emerge.
All right, we have Ada calling in from Jos. Hello, Ada, if you're there.
Yes, sir. Hello?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hello?
Good evening.
Hello?
Hello, you're on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, your name is on screen. Just go right
Hello,
ahead.
yes. Ada from Jos. Good evening. This is what I expect from the 9th Assembly, is that they should amend the Constitution or whatever there is to amend to enable them look into the following. That is the work on the electoral reforms. Sequence of election in Nigeria, it should be conducted in one day. If that is not possible and it has to be staggered, let the presidential election come last. Let's have one straight 6-year tenure. When the person finishes after 6 years, let the person go. And let that start from 2023. Let there be laws. The laws on defection should be strengthened and enforced to avoid this situation where somebody is APC in the morning, in the afternoon the person is PDP, in the evening the person is APC. So let us have some sanity in terms of defections. Again, let them try as much as possible to maintain a cordial relationship with the executive, devoid of being a rubber stamp. That can happen. So we don't have what we were experiencing in the 8th Assembly. And then again, registration of political parties. Please let them look into it. This time around, what we had last time was some of the political gladiators started doing it. They now have used those platforms to be putting whoever they want to put in case they lose out on the other one. So you saw what happened. Some of them came up with what you call a perfect alliance or whatever, where you have two gubernatorial candidates, one for the ruling party, one for the I don't know how to describe it. You know what I'm talking about. So please let them bring some sanity in our electoral reforms. Above all, they should place national interest above personal, primordial, and party interest. I just pray they get it right this time around. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Ada. And that takes us straight to our Port Harcourt Center. And Prof, you heard the last caller. A key issue, and so many Nigerians are talking about it, the electoral reform. What should the 9th Assembly be looking at here when it comes in? The electoral reforms. People have talked about the way elections are conducted. What are your views?
My view, with all due respect, is that the 9th Assembly should immediately not think of going through the electoral reform on their own. What the 9th Assembly should do is engage stakeholders in order to go through these electoral reforms. Say, for instance, as a stakeholder in this process of electoral reform, if they engage me, among others, I will ask them, regardless of what opinions are in Nigeria generally, I believe we are right to go into electronic voting. Yes, every other voting system has its own problem. People say they will hack into the computer and all the rest. But certainly, it will be better if we can be able to use BVN now and all the other electronic devices to collect money, even the one that has to do with our national ID card and all the rest. I think electronic voting will have saved costs. It will save with respect to loss of lives and destruction of properties. I think we should go for that. I would have wanted to prefer my opinion as to that. Then there are also the necessity, after listening to people and all the rest, put up whatever every other person have said, not that will be right. That's why I said they should call for a stakeholders. They should also engage the executive. And then the one that is on the president table now and not, which has not been signed, I believe that all can be matched together and then we have a complete electoral reform. But they should not do it all on their own and believe in us. Let us hear our views and then present it generally. And if there is need, they should conduct a referendum for the purpose of this electoral reform because it's a very serious issue. Because it's more or less like a constitutional issue. So electoral reform, generally, if every other person contributes with respect to electoral reforms, I think it will go down well with most Nigerians generally. They will be happy. But most especially, if I happen to prefer my opinion, I think the electronic voting will have been better off.
We have another caller. This time it's Umar from Birnin Kebi, Umar Anache, who's a regular on this call. But for some time now, Umar, hello. You've been very quiet for the past couple of editions. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Ciro. I'm Umar Anache calling from Birnin Kebi. It's been a while.
Yes.
APC constitute the majority in the National Assembly. No two ways about that one. But I don't like the way Comrade is talking about the APC is not a national union. The way he is talking about the leadership, how the selection process would be, is more or less like he's comparing the party as a union affair. Party and union affair, they are different entirely. So there is what is called lobby in the party. It is not a matter of enforcing the candidate on the National Assembly. No, you lobby. And lobby means you beg, you dialogue, until consensus is reached. But the way he's talking about it, it seems as if the minority will turn the majority because they will conspire. Those who are hot will conspire with the minority and constitute the majority. And for that, they will become leaders. You know, I mean, Adam Oshimole should realize that APC is not a union. That is what I want him to know. May God continue to bless our country. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Umar Anachi. Well, Honorable Idahosa, from the past two calls.
Well, two things have been pointed out. First is the mode of communication, which we've talked about when it comes to the leadership of the National Assembly. And I have always argued that the leadership of the National Assembly must be allowed to evolve from within. If you don't allow it to evolve, two things may happen. The first is the leadership that is commanded on them, if it doesn't meet their expectation, will be sacked within the next couple of months. You can't stop that. Those night meetings will take place, and they will go. That's one. The second point would be there will be an immediate rebellion on the floor. New floor generals will emerge, who will kill, as we put it, every bill coming from that leader, just to show to, they may even be active members of the party in power, just to show to the party in power that you can't dare us. There are many ways we can send a message to you. Now, let's talk about the electoral reform. We all agree as a country that there is so much desperation for power in our country. There is only one way out. Let's get a sensible election modality for voting. Once we get that method, that we stop too much human interference. The problem is the human beings who are the ones causing the problem. Once we can deal with the electronic reforms electorally and make it the medium of communication by way of preference of vote, there will be reduced bloodshed, there will be reduced manipulation, reduced rigging. And lastly, before I end, don't also forget that the human interference includes the security community, the soldiers, the policemen, and so many of those who are really not needed, who are causing more confusion in the process. And this is the way to get out of it. Go electronically, and I am sure that we will enjoy it.
Let's go over to the phones again. We have Kene calling in from Makudi. Hello, Kene. Hello, are you there? Well, it would seem that Kene called in and he suddenly become shy of speaking out. So we'll just have to move on and expect more calls to come in. Honorable Kumalia, the electoral reforms. First caller on this program talked about that. And of course, there are so many things she talked about, including a review of the Constitution and making the presidency a 6-year tenure, or single 6-year tenure. What are your views on that?
Well, I think what I will add to the issue of electoral reform is very key. It is important, but I think we need to come clean. They say, oh, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. The INEC as a body has to come with clean hands. The parliament, as it were, must come with clean hands. And what do I mean here? In a parliament that has a lifespan of 4 years, the INEC, would send proposals for amendment of the electoral law in the 3rd year. And it is only a couple of months to election that the final version will be dusted and will be sent to the president for accent. Now, that is very disingenuous. We know our problems. We know all that we have gone through. If we want to be honest about the process, let it be done within the 1st year of the 4-year tenure of the administration, so that everything is, hashed out. Because part of the reason why the last Electoral Act, the accent to that bill was declined by the president, was because of certain innuendos that was made, that the National Assembly members put in some clauses there, tampering on the sequence of elections because of the obvious disagreement that has ensued between the executive and legislature with, previously within the term or within the period of their tenure. And therefore, there was this mutual suspicion amongst themselves. So let them come clean. Let it be as quickly as possible. Within the 1st year, we all know what the problems are. Go electronic. Put the sequence in a way and manner that ensures that the beneficiaries of the process are the Nigerian people, not legislators, not executive. Now, coming to the issue of constitutional amendment, the issue of 6-year tenure, there are 1,000,001 issues that needs to be amended in this constitution. Tenure might be one. That's her opinion. It was done during the Abuja 1995, was it 1995 constitution, one term of 6 years to rotate among the 6 geopolitical zones, so that every zone would have had one term of 6 years, after which it will now be open, no more zoning, no more, whatever, and so on and so forth. I was a part of the legal drafting committee, not as a member of the Constitutional Review Committee, but as technical staff, as a technocrat. At that time, Justice Muhammad Nasir, the former president of the Court of Appeal, was the chairman of the drafting committee. So I know so much about what had happened and the wisdom that went into it. But beyond that, in the Constitution, there are other fundamental issues that need amendment. There is the issue of the independence of the parliaments, of the state houses of assembly. We're talking about rubber stamp here. Here we are, so in some states, a governor will take his budget to the parliament in the afternoon, and by evening, it has been passed, and it's 7 o'clock news, the governor of the state is signing the bill into law. That's one. The autonomy of the local governments is another key issue. So there are quite a number of issues. Incidentally, when I was member of the Constitution Review Committee, or the National Conference, they termed it then, of 2014 National Conference, there are quite a few issues that we had discussed that needs to be achieved or actualized through constitutional amendment, and most of these things are still hanging.
All right, back to the phones. From Borno, we have Sadiq calling in. Hello, Sadiq. Thanks for staying on the line.
Good night. Hello. Good night. How are you?
Yes, go right ahead.
Sincerely, we have lost, we have missed and well-educated member house representative Maiduguri Politan in person of Umara Kumalia. We have missed him. We have missed a well-educated member from Maiduguri Metropolitan Borough. And I want to the last or last to the second caller, APC is not a national union. Yes, APC is not a national union. I mean, he was directing our national that Adam be careful, this and that. APC is not a national union. Adam didn't prevent PDP members to contest for.
I guess you know what, Sadiq? We're having challenges with your line. It is not very clear, and we can hardly make out. So we might have to terminate that call and request that you call back. Perhaps when you call back, it would be a bit clearer. But let's come to you again, Wala. And the two calls so far, the ones that have been, or perhaps, two that have been very clear, talked about reforms. And every time people talk about what the national incoming Ninth Assembly should do, top on it has always been electoral reforms.
Right. I hold the view that although it's not a bad idea to think of how we can reform our electoral laws, but I feel that as a nation we have concentrated so much on the procedure for electing and changing leaders because we soon get, either we get used to them or we get fed up with them, that in my view we're also taking our eyes off of the fundamentals of the constitutional amendment that will bring good governance to the people, because part of the responsibility of government is to bring good governance, to improve the economy. And over time in the National Assembly, we have raised this issue. If you look at, for example, the competition bill, the competition bill has been there. We talked about it. They would lift it up and have a conversation around it, and then they will leave it. Even the petroleum industry bill that would have liberalized the market, thereby creating lots of opportunities and investors to come into the country, was discussed. In fact, in the 8th Senate, they achieved something considerably. But then there are many other laws that if they are amended, it will bring either employment, it will improve the welfare of people, it will probably generate tax. There are so many areas that this government can bring deliverables to the people. But every time after election, because of the problems that will emerge after the election, we then become concerned about the procedure for electing the next person. I'll give you an example. For example, the president, so much was said, including the amending the Constitution and the Electoral Act, Section 25 sub 1, the sequence as against the date, which INEC has powers by law. Now the president has emerged. He's not going for a third time. He can as well say, okay, I agree to your proposal. Let us amend the sequence. I'm not going to be the president, shall candidate next time. So anytime we amend the laws, we're looking at the immediate leader on ground. By the time he leaves, then that same law that we're all seeking to amend becomes adversarial to the next person that is coming. All right. That's my view.
Okay, back to the phone. Saad from Abuja, hello. Hello.
Yeah, hello, good evening, Mr. Sorry.
Yes, go right ahead.
Hello.
Go right ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, go ahead. Your name is on screen. You're on.
Yeah, okay. When they talk about ideology, they're talking about ideology, political ideology, and then parties must have. What I believe is that the ideology is just putting food on the table, flagging the flag. The ideology issue only exists when, during Cold War, when there was an issue of the Eastern Bloc and Western Bloc communism and then capitalism. So now we all know our own problem. Our problem from 1960 to date is this something. Whichever party that come for campaigning or whatever is the same issue that we talk about power, about road, about quality education, and what have you. So that is the major problem of Nigeria. And our problem is so enormous. And one of it, we all know, our political culture is one of the problems that we have in Nigeria. Enlightenment in terms of democratic culture or democratic culture is very important to our people, because really what we have now, more often than not, you can find out those that are occupying the political offices sometimes more often than not, the situation you can find out, the options that you have, the beauty of multiple democratic system is for you to have options. In a situation whereby you have the two dominant parties, has produced people that they are, I can say, equal when it comes to lack of quality or capacity or capability to rule. One must emerge. So this is our problem. So our people need to be enlightened when it comes to the democratic culture. And also, I'm also advocating for independent candidacy. It's very important. One must not have to go through a platform that is a political party before vying for a political office, because they make it so they have monetized it. Everything has been monetized. No matter how good you are, no matter how this thing you are, qualified you are, there is every possibility when you go through a political party, you cannot emerge as a candidate to vie for political office. So by bringing independent candidacy, I believe that can help for good people to also. And that is my own submission. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for your views. Thank you. Well, we are on the last lap of this program now. And again, people have said that most of the challenges you faced in this democracy stems from the fact that the parties themselves, within themselves, have no true democratic structures. Internal democracy is a problem that has led to so many court cases, even from the point of nominations and all that, and they're still seeing that as going on. The question here is, can political actors who have challenges with internal democracy deliver democratic dividends to the populace in general?
In my view, no.
This is not a question of party, any particular party.
I agree. In my view, it is practically impossible unless and until we will consciously work towards deepening democracy. Else, how else do you judge or adjudge the procedure for somebody to actualize his vision of leading the people? And let me tell you this is my view. President Buhari is, in my view, the only person having the opportunity at the moment to bring about a process of deepening democracy. And I will tell you the premise. His brother-in-law picked a form and vied for governorship in a state. And during the primaries, pressure was put on him to ensure that his brother-in-law got a ticket. He refused. I have never seen this since the 1999. From 1999, in fact, up until 2015, from 1999, the procedure for emerging is just getting the ticket, PDP. Once you secure ticket, you are the winner. Because when people are queued up to vote even, they will announce you as a winner. So democracy has not been deepened. Now, in our party, quite frankly, the national chairman came up and began to, have this passion of wanting to free people, especially legislators, from the encumbrance of governors. Because governors will decide who emerge as senator or who emerge as House of Rep member. And then he decided that, look, we're going to deepen democracy and not allow this influence from governors. But as time went on, there are people who would also allege that when he has done that and freed the people, then comes the issue of then how do the people emerge? And then they started picking and, saying this person. I ran for Senate FCT here. We went through the primaries. They said we're going to have direct primaries. These people wanted to burn down the secretariat, that it must be indirect. And he stood his ground and said it must be direct. Before the president said if we cannot experiment it in FCT, there is no basis for us to believe to work in Nigeria. Cut the long story short, we came for primaries. One of the aspirants, we started these primaries around, I think, 8 or 9 o'clock. By 11 o'clock, they said he has garnered 500 and something thousand votes from Gwagwalada. There was no traffic. And don't forget, in this last election, the guy who won as the senator won with only 300 and something thousand. Clearly, there was a problem. In the course of the primaries, they had to cancel it and call it inconclusive. We were waiting for a day to be announced for us to do the primaries, only to hear that names were submitted to INEC in the interest of peace and wanting to factor in the indigents. How do you call that deepening of democratic values and promoting a process whereby people believe that if I have the popular support, I can emerge as a leader.
Honorable Kubadia, deepening democracy, internal democracy.
Well, I think the starting point, actually, of the democratic process, starts with the process within the political parties. If political parties do not have the wherewithal, the courage to ensure that there is the democracy within the process of emergence of leaders within the party, then they have no moral justification of accusing the other party, of doing one thing or another that seems to undermine the electoral process. So to that as the premise, there is a lot of grounds to be covered by all the political parties, PDP, APC, in terms of, the internal democracy and respect for the rights of individuals, individual party members. In a situation where a political party comes up and says, okay, this is time for elections, anybody that wants to be senator, House of Representatives member, governor, whatever, come and buy forms. And somebody brings out 22.5 million naira to buy a form for governor, and there's an incumbent governor who goes and muzzles the process. There is no primary, and somebody emerges. And when you complain to the party, for instance, the party will not listen to you. Now, or after allowing people to purchase forms, then you come and say that, oh, I remember I have promised automatic tickets to members of parliament, to National Assembly members. Okay, if you had promised them automatic tickets, why did you sell forms to the others? You sold forms to them, you collected 6.5 million or whatever. These people have gone to speak to their people that I want to contest for the office of Senate of this constituency. They have mobilized people and gingered them up. And then all of a sudden, you say, no, I promised the incumbent, as a policy of the party, the incumbent is going to be given automatic ticket, and therefore no other person is going to be given opportunity to contest primaries. Now, these are all issues that happened even in the immediate past primary election process of all the political parties, not only one. So to that extent, the parties need to be honest. There is, you see, the contestation for power. It's a continuous, it's a chess game, and I understand the difficulty that party administrators go through in terms of the various power blocks and the influences. You have a governor here who says, without me, nobody can deliver the state, so you must give me all my House Assembly members, all my senators, all my House of Representative members on the one hand. But on the other hand, he himself cannot even win, the Senate seat that he's contesting for. In many instances, sitting governors lose their Senate seats. But meanwhile, they have been given all the offices they wanted. And even the candidate that he has put as governor ends up losing.
Not marketable.
Or he himself, as a second time, look at what happened in APC, for instance, at least in Adamawa and Bauchi State. Sitting governors, first-time governors, lost the election. So, you see, that shows you that it's not everything that the governor says
it's sacrosanct.
That is sacrosanct or must be obeyed. The people that look smaller than the governors in terms of profile and access to public funds and so on and so forth should also be respected. Believe you me, in some cases, some of these people that are not governors may have had tremendous experience, even more than the person that is governor. It's just fate that made so-so person a governor. So I understand the challenge that party administrators go through in terms of all these power blocks. But at the same time, they must have a uniform process of dealing with the situations. And unless you put that in place, you have no basis to complain about the actions of another party that has violated the electoral process and maybe, carried some advantages, inappropriately. So I think we have a long way to go.
Right. Honorable West Dahosa.
Still on this point?
Yeah, well
I think that I adopt what they have said, but significantly, poverty is part of the biggest problem. poverty of the mind and of the pocket. You remember that the process of internal party misrule doesn't just start from primaries. It starts from the selection of the party leaders themselves. Okay. When they gather together and share money to candidate poor delegates, that's where the sale is done. And then the leaders you have sold a mandate to, in turn, sell you out by then deciding who gets your ticket. So we have to deal with economic prosperity first. Until we free ourselves, no chance.
One of our callers, Ada it was, made an interesting point. So the incoming assembly should do something about defection. That somebody is APC in the morning, is PDP in the afternoon.
Is ABGA by evening.
In the evening is ABGA.
Yeah, correctly. The National Assembly, I think, is well taken care of in the sense that if you look at the Assembly, I mean, the laws are clear there that you cannot leave your party to another unless two conditions occur. One, that there has been a merger of two parties or two factions, or one of which you belong to, or there has been a split, legitimate one. What is national split or legitimate split is a different matter entirely. Right. It is part of the splinter group that is also living. But it's not so. The judiciary has given the executive office holders a free ticket from following judicial decisions in this country. The governors can leave whenever they live with their structures and so on. But significantly, the parties can stop that. They had the stop check in their parties. But because of the desperation to win a power, they've been lifting it. Some parties proud to now give conditionalities. You know, they could make it 2 years membership, 3 years membership. In fact, some have so amended it now to 30 days just because they needed to get candidates that are eligible or people who they consider as hotcakes in certain sectors. So, and then others have also introduced what they call waiver into their constitutions. So a man comes in today, you invoke the waiver right, and you give him the ticket. And then he takes the ticket, he leaves tomorrow, they invoke the waiver right, and then he takes the ticket, and so on and so forth.
Well, Prof, right there in Port Harcourt Center, you've listened to part of this discussion from Abuja here. Two things I'd like you to do on the question of defections, and then beyond that, in the National Assembly that's coming in the 9th Assembly, again, Nigerians are looking at the relationship between the two dominant parties. Now, well, quite clearly, there's no love lost between the two dominant parties, the PDP and the APC. And Nigerians say that may well play out on the floor of the National Assembly up and above national interest. What should they do?
Well, for the first one you asked me, which has to do with the issue on national interest, I believe that the political parties should have the national interest of the national interest in their mind. When they have national interest in their mind, I am sure two of the factions will not continuously be part of our democracy. And the way they can do this in having national interest at heart is that we have seen that these defections have caused a lot of problems in the country. So what do we do with respect to this defection? There should be the 5th alteration of our constitution, if that will go well, or amendment of our constitution, saying that once you belong to a political party, is either you resign and go off, you cannot defect, whether there is a merger or there is issue, problem, disunity among the parties. Because if you leave it to disunity among the parties, it is a relative concept. What is disunity to someone is not a disunity to somebody. Or what is rivalry or quarrel between one political party and the other is different from whatever any other in terms of the issue. And then court has gone into interpreting what is rivalry, disunity, problems between the parties and other. And then some had come to say, no, we don't believe the facts presented show that there's problem. Meanwhile, there may be problem. So I think we should stop that. You defect now, then it's better you defect out. So there should be no issue of defection at all. Now to the other question, I believe that as far as Nigeria is concerned, national interest should be what everybody have. Every other person will be jostling for positions and coming to say they want to get position, as I've said earlier. But what is very, very important is the fact that we must believe that Nigeria must work, regardless of party affiliations. What we believe, regardless of what is our interest. Because if the country does not work, all of us will suffer. And it is better that the country works so that we enjoy. A lot of people, a lot of us knows that posterity will judge us. We have our children. And if they suffer because of our personal interest, then I don't believe that we have national interest in our hearts. That's my take for now.
Well, it's been suggested that this system is a little bit weighty for Nigeria to continue to operate. Perhaps a change would be better. Would eliminate the question of the bickerings, the fight over political office, and such things that may draw back legislators from performing their basic functions in the legislature. What do you say about that?
I don't get what do you mean, change from the system of democracy we're running?
This bicameral presidential system that we're on.
I share a different view. I believe that we can do better with what we have. The problem is that we have not maximized some of the laws that we have. We have not amended our laws to meet with cutting edge. There was a time in England where knife crime was so common.
It still is now. It's a major challenge now.
But what they did during, is it not David Cameron, Gordon Brown, when that thing became prevalent, especially in London, in Peckham and Lewisham, immediately the parliament passed laws. They have reduced it to the barest minimum. What they do in Senate climes, as the situation arises, because that's what the legislators exist for, to make laws for peace, order, and good government. But in Nigeria, no matter how important an issue is, if it does not, and this comes down to the issue that we're talking about, some of the legislators are not better educated or have the vision for the people, they are just after their pocket. If the problem, no matter how important it is, if it does not concern their private interest or their group interest, it is never considered as something to pursue for the purposes of amending the laws. I often hear people cry that what we have is not a constitution. What we have is a dirty paper, throw it to the dustbin, and then let's have a fresh constitution. And the question I ask is, have we actually activated some of the provisions of the constitution? There's a lot in our constitution that we can bring to bear and promote good governance. The National Assembly, whether the Senate or House of Representatives, have we talked about constituency? When people vote you go to represent them. There is a total disconnect between lawmakers and their constituency. I was in South Dakota in March last year. I had a meeting with Senator John Thune. Senator John Thune is the Senate Chair of Commerce. He is the third highest Republican ranking senator in the United States. I met with him in his constituency office in South Dakota. They had office. They had staff working there. They had members of the constituency coming in to lodge complaint. And he visits every Friday. He said, every Friday I'm here in the constituency. He sits down and listens to people. Some of our legislators, from when they get the victory announcement, before they come back, it is only when it is election cycle. And their perception of the constituency is, as long as I can handpick key troublemakers and then enrich them or empower them, then I've solved the problem of the constituency. Part of what I have learned in my little, adventure in this politics was, especially when I started to start Southern Borno, I went there. And the people think that when you're running for office, you're running for their pocket. No, you're running to bring good governance to the people. Do you know that there is something they call constituency project? EFCC is literally chasing legislators to fulfill their condition. You know that legislators don't go to execute. They identify, they influence, and then the MDJs, implement. Most often than not, that legislator who is either fronting a company or is one of his cronies is the one that is executing the project. There is never a project in that place. Assuming that we are actually doing what we are supposed to do, I am telling you, Dr. Cyril, the question will not arise as to whether we need to change the system of government that we're running.
Like the doctor part. Except that it doesn't exist. Right, well, the barrister has said quite a few interesting things. And yes, a lot needs to be done in relation to the relationship between the constituents and their representative. Even under the present, system, the legislators are given money to secure constituency offices. They have a retinue of staff, some of whom are constituency staff. Our system is modeled, like Honorable West Edo has said, after, the presidential system of government, in the United States. So the constituency offices are supposed to function as the hub where all issues relating to that constituency, are brought to that office, documented, and for the representative to take them from there and bring it to Parliament. Now, this brings up a very important issue, which is the issue of constituency projects. Now, in the United States, Congress, what we call constituency projects here, they call it pork barrel projects, or earmarks. They call it earmarks or pork barrel projects. Just Google it and see. Pork barrel project means projects that representatives, be you a senator or a House of Representatives member, introduce into the appropriation law of matters that directly affect your constituents. Right. So every legislator brings these issues that are of importance to his constituency and makes sure that it is part of the appropriation. And when the law is passed, it is expected that those, jobs will be, will be executed, and he will go back and ensure that, okay, you have complained about this, we are putting in the appropriation law, and it has now been taken care of. But the problem is where individual interest comes in, where, for instance, like he rightly said, legislators would either, bring in their own companies to do it, or they bring their friends' companies, or they bring cronies, as it were, so much so that either, one, the work is not executed, or two, the work is done haphazardly. The quality of the work does not meet the standard because somebody wants to extract as much benefit as possible from the project. You understand what I'm saying? When these things happen, then the representative would have failed his constituency, will have failed his people, and this is where, if you allow me, Cyril, this is where there has to be a clear understanding between the executive and the legislature, that the legislature has a responsibility as elected representatives, people who have campaigned and had made promises, and people who ought to have offices where people bring direct complaints, and people that are closer to the grassroots, they have a responsibility to ensure that some of these complaints are captured by way of appropriations in the national budget. But conversely, the legislators also have a responsibility to ensure that these projects are executed faithfully and honestly.
All right. We'll just about run out of time, and we'll just have enough time to say thank you to our guests. But one quick thing, and that is, shouldn't this be what the parties should be worried about and trying to, give some kind of orientation to particularly new members than the struggle over leadership positions?
Yeah, correct. I think that's what they should be doing, really, because if this is correctly done, that will give the lawmakers, especially those who are coming in, the standing to carry out their job, and the fact that they know that the party is keeping a watch over their performance index, and that the party is also helping to communicate to the constituency what is expected from the lawmakers. But does this really matter to them as we speak? No. So long as there is some price for loyalty, the party is happy.
Well, it's on that note we'll have to conclude this program. We'd like to say thank you to our guest who joined us from our Port Harcourt Network Center, Professor Abiodun, a senior advocate of Nigeria. We thank you for being part of this discussion. Thank you very much.
Very much too, my brother. God bless you.
Okay. And Honorable Westi Dahosa, we thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Honorable Kumadia, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. Having been there yourself. Well, both of you were there before. Yeah. Oh, by the way, you didn't fight over offices there, did you?
No, we didn't fight. And thank you for having me, Cyril.
Okay, thank you very much. And then Daniel Bona.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. And so thank you for being part of this program. Thank you to you too. Next week we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.